God, my brain is not working. Hi, everybody. What am I supposed to say? It's like 3 in the afternoon and my freaking chair is not. I'm beating the crap out of my fence. Not fence. Sorry, I meant to say I'm beating the crap out of the. My brain not working. Sorry, everybody. Yeah. As you can tell, I laid down my couch. I laid down my bed for a few seconds, and I'm already wanting to go and sleep. Okay, what else can I do? What else can I do? Oh, right. You know what? You see this thing down here? That's the book we're doing today. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the stream. We are going to do another reading stream, but as we finish War of the Wolves, last week, was it last weekend or was it like 2 weeks before? 2 weeks before. You know what? 2 weeks before. So, as we finished War of the Wolves 2 weeks before, right? And now we're gonna move on to a new book. And as I run a poll on Twitter that happened earlier on today, so you can see here. Give me a second. I mean, I'm not gonna show it in here because I'm poo poo dum dum. Sorry. When you can kind of tell my voice is like somewhat half sleepy, or I don't really know. And it's that time of the day where I just have no clue what I'm doing. Also, plus I'm just like really blocked out my face. So anyway, the book here and this game is the winner of the poll that happened on Twitter. So as I look back on the Twitter, we had 13 votes on Twitter regarding what book should we cover for the reading stream today. And Ender's Game won by a huge margin, 61.5%. Zima Blue trailing did not trail behind. Last place 15.4%. Zima Blue was something interesting I thought I should cover, but maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that in the future. And Heart of Darkness 23.1. It does not mean the books that didn't win, right, aren't gonna be right in the future. It's just that since people wanted to listen to Ender's Game, Ayobusu, I'm still napping. Please keep me company. Welcome, Akate and Pochik. Calming voice. Feet. Hey, I see everyone has come back. Welcome, everybody. Calming, huh? I'm in that state where I'm just like half napping too. Busu. Yes, thank you. Welcome back, Akate. And also, Peak, welcome. You can chill here while I read Ender's Game. Now, Ender's Game. Oh wait, hold on. Before I go back into like discussing Ender's Game, before I start streaming, the other two books, just because they lost the poll, doesn't mean that they won't be covered in the coming after this book is done. This book, as I can tell, a piece of arrow just came out. The book, business card just came out. This book is 446 pages long. So I'm not sure how long this will take, but you know what? I'm willing to go through it. But however, today, since I am on a slightly smaller schedule, I will probably try to delay it. It's early morning, but I don't want to miss your stream, so I will doze and listen. Ah, thank you so much, Poching. You're so sweet. Doing so far for me. Ah. Anyway, yeah. I'm always afraid that these streams don't do too well because I'm more on the calmer side. Plus, it's just reading. So, okay. Off topic. Sorry. Let me reel back before we begin. What is Ender's Game? As you can see here, I am using the book cover. Here comes from Sam Weber, and this book I bought from Kinokuniya on like 2019. I bought it last year. So let us read this. I'm gonna read out the summary from behind the book. Not for the first time, Earth is under attack. An alien species is poised for a final assault. The survival of humanity depends on a military genius who can defeat the aliens. But who? Ender Wiggin, brilliant, ruthless, cunning, tactical, strategic master, and a child. Ender's childhood ends the moment he enters his new home, Battle School. Among the elite recruits, he proves himself to be a genius among geniuses. He excels in simulated war games, but are the pressure and loneliness taking their toll? Simulations are one thing. How will he perform in real combat conditions? After all, Battle School is just a game, isn't it? So yes, the gist of Ender's Game, as I've gone through before, and actually, here's a fun fact. I've actually read through all of the Ender's of Ender's story, basically from Ender's Game to Speaker of the Dead, and then Children of the Mind. So this is a book series that I do appreciate because of its understanding of how childhood trauma works, or at least like the ideas of forcing children to go through things they should not reasonably go through. And in this story, the protagonist himself is a child, as noted by the summary of the book, and he goes through a lot of stuff. We're gonna go through that together. So, as you can see here, end this game. So, when this book came out, it was published first in 1977. So, is it 1991? Or is it 1997? Hold on. Give me a sec, okay? Let me just look up. I'm gonna fill you guys up on like more technical information. So the publication of Ender's Game originally happened in 1985. So this book is, compared to War of the Worlds, this book is relatively quite new. If we're gonna count down from like the years, it's been almost 40 years since this book has been released. But however, the themes of Battle School is actually quite interesting because Battle School has been substituted today for what we do now, video games. Isn't it all just a game, isn't it? And very interestingly, it's not covered up. I don't know whether Orson Scott Card has a different opinion on video games and whatnot, but I find it interesting from a perspective of, using games to teach children how to do very unsavory things like violence and whatnot. But that strays into more of a moral policing territory because that's not fun. And yes, as you can see here, portions of the book were encountered in my first published science fiction story, Ender's Game, in August 1977's Analog, undated by Ben Bova. So this is all coming from what's it called? This is is acknowledgement by Orson Scott Card. And surprisingly, this book, which is published by Thor, actually has an introduction. So it makes me a little uncomfortable writing an introduction to Ender's Game. After all, the book has been in print for 6 years. Oh yeah, okay. Blah 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 blah. It was based on an idea, the Battle Room, that came to me when I was 16 years old. I had just read Isaac Asimov's Foundations trilogy, which more or less was an extrapolation of an idea in Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, applied to a galaxy-wide empire in some far future time. So yes, I will not read the entire bit of the introductions, but you can kind of understand that the gist of the story. There's another part that's poignant. It was an idea that rang true with me, because perhaps in part because of my Mormon upbringings and belief. Human beings may be miserable specimens in the main, but we can learn, and through learning become decent people. So, okay, the story is not dedicated to how cruel children is, despite my Okay, so the main points of this book before I start reading, right? And before I get carried on doing that, I like to bring up, for those new to the stream, hey, welcome to the reading stream. So if you're new to the kind of reading stream that I carry out, this is actually how it goes. As you see here, I will read the selected story uninterrupted for a chapter. After the chapter ends, I will take a 5 minutes break to regain breath, and then that's it. But given the length of this book, so I might need to take a break somewhat frequently compared. I don't know. So history is shaped by the use of power. So the very interesting thing of Ender's Game is power, manipulation, and now that we can start off with the chapter. Before that, I'm gonna turn off the music real quick. Okay, so we're gonna listen to Alien Isolation Nap. Okay, sorry, the pets are all in the room. So what I'm gonna say is I did an analysis on this book based on linguistics in the idea of manipulation through words, and it wasn't the easiest discussion to have, especially when I was quite keen in the book and I really still don't understand linguistics until like to this day. I gotta say, this is a very interesting book for you guys to pick up, and more modern, I guess, more relatable than things like War of the World. So without further ado, I don't know how to snap my fingers, but you know what? We're gonna listen to some computer monitors while we read. Hope you guys are doing I hope you guys are doing fine this Saturday afternoon. It is 3:14 p.m. at time of record. The time of time of reading, and we will begin today's reading stream with chapter 1, third. I've watched through his eyes, I've listened through his ears, and I tell you he's the one. Or at least as close as we're going to get. That's, huh? Sorry, give me a second. Someone's calling me. I'm so sorry, everybody. I had something going on, so basically, yeah, I had the message someone to call me back later, but don't worry, it won't interrupt our stream too badly. Sorry. So okay, we're gonna get the brother tested out impossible for other reasons, nothing to do with his ability. Same with the sister, and there are doubts about him. He's too malleable, too willing to submerge himself in someone's will. Not if the other person's is his enemy. So what do we do? Surround him with enemies all the time? If we have to. I thought you said you like this kid. If the buggers get to him, they'll make me look like his favorite uncle. All right, we're saving the world after all. Take him. The monitor lady smiled very nicely and tousled his hair and said, Andrew, I suppose by now you're absolutely sick of having that horrid mentor. Well, I have good news for you. That monitor is going to come out today. We're going to take it right out. And it won't hurt a bit. Ender nodded. It was a lie, of course, that it wouldn't hurt a bit. But since adults always said when it was going to hurt, he could count on that statement as an accurate prediction of the future. Sometimes lies were more dependable than the truth. So if you just come over here, Andrew, just sit right up here on the examining table. The doctor will be in to see you in a moment. The monitor gone. Ender tried to imagine the little device missing from the back of his neck. I'll roll over back on my back on bed and it won't be pressing there. I won't feel it tingling and taking up the heat when I shower. And Peter won't hate me anymore. I'll come home and show him that the monitor's gone, and he'll see that I didn't make it either. That I'll just be a normal kid now, like him. That won't be so bad then. He'll forgive me that I had my monitor a whole year longer than he had his. We'll be not friends, probably. No. Peter was too dangerous. Peter got so angry. Brothers, though. Not enemies. Not friends, but brothers. Able to live in the same house. He won't hate me. He'll just leave me alone. And when he wants to play buggers and astronauts, maybe I won't have to play. Maybe I can just go read a book. But Ender knew, even as he thought it, that Peter wouldn't leave him alone. There was something in Peter's eyes when he was in his mad mood. And whenever Ender saw that look, that glint, he knew that the one thing Peter would not do was leave him alone. I'm practicing piano, Ender. Come turn the pages for me. Oh, is the monitor boy too busy to help his brother? Is he too smart? Got to go kill some buggers, astronaut? No, I don't want your help. I can do it on my own, you little bastard. You little turd. This won't take long, Andrew, said the doctor. Ender nodded. It's designed to be removed, without infection, without damage. But there'll be some tickling, and some people say there'll be a feeling of something missing. You'll keep looking around for something you were looking for, but you can't find it, and you can't remember what it was. So I'll tell you, it's the monitor you're looking for, and it isn't there. In a few days, that feeling will pass. The doctor was twisting something at the back of Ender's head. Suddenly a pain stabbed him through like a needle from his neck to his groin. Ender felt like his back spasmed, and his body arced violently backwards. His head struck the bed. He could feel his legs thrashing, and his hands were clenching each other, wringing each other so tightly that they arced. Dee Dee! Shouted the doctor. I need you! The nurse ran in, gasped. Got to relax these muscles. Get it to me now. What are you waiting for? Something changed hands. Ender could not see. He lurched to one side and fell off the examining table. Catch him, cried the nurse. Just hold him steady. You hold him, doctor. He's too strong for me. Not the whole thing. You'll stop his heart. Okay, sorry, the cat's on my bed. Okay, you know what? I can't have. I'm really sorry for the interruptions. I just don't like animals in my room, so yes. I like the animals overall, but not in my room because there's in my sleepy haze. I heard your girl voice and it made me smile. Oh my god! Ender felt a needle enter his back just above the neck of his shirt. It burned, but wherever in him he does fire spread, his muscles, his muscles gradually unclench. Now he could cry for the fear and the pain of it. Are you alright, Andrew? The nurse asked. Andrew could not remember how to speak. They lifted him onto the table. They checked his pulse, did other things. He did not understand it at all. He did not understand it all. The doctor was trembling. His voice shook as he spoke. They leave these things in the kids for 3 years. What do they expect? We could have switched him off. Do you realize that? We can have unplugged his brain for all time. When does the drug wear off? Asked the nurse. Keep him here for at least an hour. Watch him. If he doesn't start talking in 15 minutes, call me. Could have unplugged him forever. I don't have the brains of a bugger. He got back to Miss Pumphrey's class only 15 minutes before the closing bell. He was still a little unsteady on his feet. Are you alright, Andrew? Asked Miss Pumphrey. He nodded. Were you ill? He shook his head. And you don't look so well. I'm okay. You better sit down, Andrew. He started toward his seat, but stopped. But now what was I looking for? I can't think what I was looking for. Your seat is over there, said Miss Pumphrey. He sat down, but it was something else he needed. Something he had lost. I'll find it later. Your monitor, whispered the girl behind him. Andrew shrugged. His monitor? She whispered to the others. Andrew reached up and felt his neck. There was a band-aid. It was gone. He was just like everyone else now. Washed out, Andy? Asked the boy who sat across the aisle and behind him. Couldn't think of his name. Peter. No, that was someone else. Quiet, Mr. Stilson, said Miss Pumphrey. Stilson smirked. Miss Pumphrey talked about multiplication. Ender doodled on his desk, drawing contour maps on mountainous islands and then telling his desk to display them in 3 dimensions from every angle. The teacher would know, of course, that he wasn't paying attention, but she wouldn't bother him. He always knew the answer, even when she thought he wasn't paying attention. In the corner of his desk, a word appeared and began marching around the perimeter of the desk. It was upside down and backward at first, but Ender knew what it said long before it reached the bottom of the desk and turned right side up. Third. Wait, is it? Ender smiled. He was the one who had figured out how to send messages and make them march, even as his secret enemy called them names. The method of delivery praised him. It was not his fault that he was a third. It was the government's idea. They were the ones who authorized it. How else could a third like Ender have got into school? And now the end monitor was gone. The experiment titled Andrew Wiggin hadn't worked out after all. If they could, he was sure they would like to rescind the waivers that had allowed him to be born at all. Didn't work, so erase the experiment. The bell rang. Everyone signed off their desks or hurriedly typed in reminders to themselves. Some were dumping lessons or data into their computers at home. A few gathered at the printers while something they wanted to show was printed out. Ender spread his hands over the child-sized keyboard near the edge of the desk, and wondered what it would feel like to have hands as large as a grown-up's. They must feel so big and awkward. Thick, stubby fingers and beefy palms. Of course, they had bigger keyboards, but how could their thick fingers draw a fine line the way Ender could? A thin line so precise that he could make it spiral 79 times from the center of the table to the edge of the desk without the lines ever touching or overlapping. It gave him something to do while the teacher droned on about arithmetic. Arithmetic! Valentine had taught him arithmetic when he was 3. Are you alright, Andrew? Yes, ma'am. You missed the bus. Ender nodded and got up. Oh, the kids. The other kids were gone. They would be waiting though, the bad ones. His monitor wasn't perched on his neck, hearing what he heard and seeing what he saw. They could say what they like. They may even hit him now. No one could see them anymore, and so no one would come to Ender's rescue. There were advantages to the monitor, and he would miss them. It was Stilson, of course. He wasn't bigger than most other kids, but he was bigger than Ender. And he had some others with him. He always did. Hey, Third. Don't answer. Nothing to say. Hey, Third. We're talking to you. Third. Hey, bugger lover. We're talking to you. Can't think of anything to answer. Anything I say will make it worse. So we'll say nothing. Hey, Third. Hey, Third. You flunked out, huh? Thought you were better than us, but you lost your little birdie, 30. Got a band-aid around your neck. Are you gonna let me through? Ender asked. Are we gonna let him through? Should we let him through? They all laughed. Sure, we'll let you through. First we'll let your arm through, then your butt through, then maybe a piece of your knee. The others chimed in now. Lost your birdie, 30. Lost your birdie, 30. It's quite funny for me to say. Stilson began pushing him with one hand. Someone behind him then pushed him towards Stilson. Seesaw, Marjorie door, someone said. Tennis! Ping pong! This will not have a happy ending. So the Ender decided that he'd rather not be the unhappiest at the end. The next time Stilson's arm came out to push him, Ender grabbed at it. He missed. Oh, gonna fight me, huh? Gonna fight me, 30? The people behind Ender grabbed at him to hold him. Ender did not feel like laughing, but he laughed. You know it means you mean it takes this many of you to fight 1/3? We are people, not thirds, third face. You're about as strong as a fart. But they let go of him, and as soon as they did, Ender kicked out high and hard, catching Stilson square in the breastbone. He dropped. It took Ender by surprise. He hadn't thought to put Stilson on the ground with one kick. It didn't occur to him that Stilson didn't take a fight like this seriously, that he wasn't prepared for a truly desperate blow. For a moment, the others backed away and Stilson lay motionless. They were all wondering if he was dead. Ender, however, was trying to figure out a way to forestall vengeance, to keep them from taking him in a pack tomorrow. I have to win this now and for all time, or I'll fight it every day and it will get worse and worse. Ender knew the unspoken rules of manly warfare, even though he was 6. It was forbidden to strike the opponent who lay helpless on the ground. Only an animal would do that. So Ender walked to Stilson's supine body and kicked him again, viciously in the ribs. Stilson groaned and rolled away from him. Ender walked around him and kicked him again, in the crotch. Stilson could not make a sound. He only doubled up and tears streamed out of his eyes. Then Ender looked at the others coldly. You might be having some idea of ganging up on me. You could probably beat me up pretty bad. But just remember what I do to people who try to hurt me. From then on, you'll be wondering when I get you, and how bad it would be. He kicked Stilson in the face. Blood from his nose spattered on the ground nearby. It wouldn't be this bad, Ender said. It would be worse. He turned and walked away. Nobody followed him. He turned a corner into the corridor leading to the bus stop. He could hear the boys behind him saying, Geez, look at him. He's wasted. Ender leaned his head against the wall of the corridor and cried until the bus came. I am just like Peter. Take my monitor away, and I am just like Peter. Alright, so that's the end of chapter 1/3. And, you know what? I've already talked about the story of this happening before, but you know, this actually does remind me of a bullying thing that did happen in school, and it was quite tragic, I guess. Maybe I wasn't as bad as the third when it came to Ender, right? But when it came to how do you say this, right? Being bullied, or at least like being ostracized for something, I felt like I was in Ender's shoe when I read that opening paragraph. So it wasn't too it's not like it triggered anything. It's just like a hindsight. It's like you read this book and you realize things like this do happen to characters, to people, and I'm pretty sure in the modern day there are worse examples of people who are treated like a third, or even worse. I don't know. The idea of the third comes from China, basically. The law, I think, the two child policy, or was it one child policy? Let me see. Yes, this is a one child policy was part of the Chinese thing, and I believe Orson Scott Card draws his inspiration of the third being ostracized from that thing, from that policy, and you can kind of see it reflected in a I guess you can say a very European society. Okay, I mean, let me see. Yeah, basically, there's nothing much I can talk about except this chapter is the opening chapter, and I feel like it does a very effective job of how do you say, it does a very effective job of establishing Andrew Wiggin, or Ender as they call him in the book, as someone who can think well above his age gap. I don't really. The novel actually does state that he's 6 at the time of this, and I gotta say, being born with putting on a monitor for like when you're 3 years old until you're 6, ooh, that's gotta be painful as hell. Oh, okay, yeah, I'm just scratching the back of my neck, so I can actually just feel it like in the back of my neck. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is, the experiences that is shown about Ender here, it's not meant to be cruel. It's meant to be pragmatic. And you know what? The way that Andrew, you know what? Let's It's called Ender's game, so we just call him Ender. When Ender takes on that methodical mindset, it can scare you. It has certainly scared me because there is no basically when you think of it this way, there's no way that a child could really think of something like manly warfare in such laid back terms. And he's 6 years old. He has a what I assume to be a desk computer, and he can do things like send messages through that system. So that's one example, one foreshadowing of his capabilities mentally. But when you see him process this turn of events that happened just now and take it out on a bully and make an example of him, it really does pin in the point of, the potential scariness that will come in the later chapters, because he's 6 years old and he is not capable of not only desperately acting like a normal child would, but his thought processes are very much ruthless. Like 6 years old, very ruthless. I wouldn't imagine that like happening anytime. Like it's scary as hell. So what else, huh? There's nothing much. It's a good introductory chapter to get everyone eased into the world of Ender's Game, where you can see there is already one clear global order, or at least like one regional order affecting the protagonist, which is the social status of the third. I don't know whether it officially reflects reality now, in the sense that there is a third policy and whatnot, but but I can tell you it's a very genuine experience as a child. When you are a child in such an environment where you are, what's it called, when you are being bullied. So I can tell you what Card does. Well, I haven't. We have to see what he does later on. What Card does in the beginning is just establish to you that this kid not to be messed with, but at the same time is the same exact reason why people choose to pick on him. Not only because he's a third, but I mean, no, solely because he's a third, and because that he is very inhuman. It's quite telling that he is scared. You can feel emotions after that. He's not completely remorseless, and the small, very sober end of the first chapter has that extract where he's just crying to himself about how much he doesn't want to be his brother. I think it serves to humanize him very well. But we will see what happens to him in the later chapters, because the next chapter is called what's it called? What's it what's it called already? The next chapter is titled Peter. I'm drinking lots of water to make sure I wake up. Okay, we're gonna start in a few seconds, but I gotta tell you something. In order to wake up, I devised something really dumb, and it's called taking an ice cube from the fridge and then holding it in your bare hands. That or just like swallow putting it in your mouth. I That's all I have to say. I won't ruminate on I won't ruminate on this because I feel like people would just see me very weirdly. Okay, chapter 2. Peter. Okay, this is the end of the Family Guy jokes. All right, it's off. How's he doing? You live inside somebody's bodies for a few years. You get used to it. I look at his face now. I can't tell what's going on. I'm not used to seeing his facial expressions. I'm used to feeling them. Come on. We're not talking about psychoanalysis here. We're soldiers, not witch doctors. You just saw him beat the guts out of the leader of the gang. He was thorough. He didn't just beat him. He beat him did. Like Mazer Rackham at the spare me. So in the judgment of the committee, he passes. Mostly. Let's see what he does to his brother. With his brother, now that the monitor's off. His brother. Aren't you afraid of what his brother will do to him? You were the one who told me that this wasn't a no-risk business. I went back through some of the tapes. I can't help it. I like the kid. I think we're going to screw him up. Of course we are. It's our job. We're the Wicked Witch. We promise gingerbread, but we eat the little bastards alive. I'm sorry, Ender, Valentine whispered. She was looking at the band-aid on his neck. Ender touched the wall and the door closed behind him. I don't care. I'm glad it's gone. What's gone? Peter walked into the parlor, chewing on a mouthful of bread and peanut butter. Ender did not see Peter as the beautiful 10-year-old boy that grown-ups saw, with thick, dark, tousled hair and a face that could have belonged to Alexander the Great. Ender looked at Peter only to detect anger or boredom, the dangerous moods that almost always led to pain. Now, as Peter's eyes discovered the band-aid on his neck, the telltale flicker of anger appeared. Valentine saw it too. Now he's like the rest of us, she said, trying to soothe him before he had time to strike. But Peter would not be soothed. Like us. He keeps the little sucker till he's 6 years old. When do you lose yours? You were 3. I lost mine before I was 5. You almost made it. Little bastard, little bugger. This was alright, Ender thought. Talk and talk, Peter. Talk is fine. Well, now your guardian angels aren't watching over you, Peter said. Now they aren't checking to see if you feel pain. Listening to hear what I'm saying. Seeing what I'm doing to you. How about that? How about it? Ender shrugged. Suddenly Peter smiled and clapped his hands together in a mockery of good cheers. Let's play buggers and astronauts, he said. Where's Mom? Asked Valentine. On. Out, said Peter. I'm in charge. I think I'll call Daddy. Call away, said Peter. You know he's never in. I'll play. Ender said. You be the bugger, said Peter. Let him be the astronaut for once, Valentine said. Kiss, get your fat face out of it, fart mouth, said Peter. Come on upstairs and choose your weapons. It would not be a good game, Ender knew. It was not a question of winning. When kids played in the corridors, whole troops of them, the buggers never won, and sometimes the games got mean. But here in their flats, the games would start means, and the bugger couldn't just go empty and quit the way buggers did in the real wars. The bugger was in it until the astronaut decided it was over. Peter opened his bottom drawer and took out the bugger mask. Mother had got upset at him when Peter bought it. But Dad pointed out that the war wouldn't go away just because you hit bugger masters and wouldn't let your kids play with make-believe laser guns. Better play the war games and have a better chance of surviving when the buggers came again. If I survive the games, thought Ender. He put on the mask. It closed on him in like a hand pressed tight against his face. But this isn't how it feels to be a bugger, thought Ender. They don't wear this face like a mask. It is their face. On their homeworld, do the buggers put on human masks and play? And what do they call us? Slimmies? Because we're so soft and oily compared to them? Watch out, Slimy, as Ender said. He could barely see Peter through the eye holes. Peter smiled at him. Slimy, huh? Well, Bugger Wugger, let's see how to break that face of yours. Ender couldn't see it coming, except a slight shift of Peter's weight. The mask cut out his peripheral vision. Suddenly there was the pain and pressure of a blow to the side of his head. He lost balance, fell that way. Don't see too well, do you, bugger? Said Peter. Ender began to take off the mask. Peter put his toe against Ender's groin. Don't take off the mask, Peter said. Ender pulled the mask down into place, took his hands away. Peter pressed on his foot. Pain shot through Ender. He doubled up. Lie flat, bugger. We're gonna vivisect you, bugger. At long last, we got one of you alive, and we're gonna see how you work. Peter, stop it, Ender said. Peter, stop it. Very good. So you buggers can guess our names. You can make yourself sound like pathetic, cute little children so that we'll love you and be nice to you. But it doesn't work. I can see you for what you really are. They meant you to be human, little turd. But you're really a bugger, and now it shows. He lifted his foot, took a step, and then knelt on Ender, his knee pressing into Ender's belly, just below the breastbone. He put more and more of his weight on Ender. It became hard to breathe. I could kill you like this, Peter whispered. Just press and press until you're dead. And I couldn't say that I didn't know it would hurt you, that we were just playing. And they believed me, and everything would be fine, and you'd be dead, and everything would be fine. Ender could not speak. The breath was being forced from his lungs. Peter might mean it. Probably didn't mean it, but then he might. I do mean it, Peter said. Whatever you think, I mean it. They only authorized you because I was so promising. But I didn't pan out. You did better. They think you're better. I don't want a better little brother, Ender. I don't want a third. I'll tell, Valentine said from the doorway. No one would believe you. They'd believe me. Then you're dead too, sweet little sister. Oh yes, they'll believe that. I didn't know it would kill Andrew, and when he was dead, I didn't know it would kill Valentine too. The pressure let up a little. So, not today, but someday you two won't be together, and there will be an accident. You're all talk. You don't mean any of it. I don't? And do you know why you don't mean it? Valentine asked. Because you want to be in government someday. You want to be elected. And they won't elect you if your opponents can dig up the fact that your brother and sister both died in suspicious accidents when they were little. Especially because of the letter I put in my secret file in the city library, which will be opened in the event of my death. Don't give me that kind of crap, said Peter. Peter said. It says, I didn't die a natural death. Peter killed me. And if he hasn't already killed Andrew, he will soon. Not enough to convict you, but enough to keep you from ever being elected. You're his monitor now, said Peter. You better watch him, day and night. You better be there. Ender and I aren't stupid. We scored as well as you did on everything. Better on some things. We're all such wonderfully bright children. You're not the smartest, Peter, just the biggest. Oh, I know. But there'll come a day when you aren't there with him, when you forget. And suddenly you'll remember, and you'll rush to him. And there he'll be, perfectly all right. And the next time you won't worry so much, and you won't come fast. And every time he'll be all right. And you'll think that I forget. Even though that you'll remember that I said this, you'll think that I forgot. And years will pass. And then there'll be a terrible accident, and I'll find his body. I'll cry and cry over him. And you'll remember this conversation, Valley. But you'll be ashamed of yourself for remembering, because you'll know that I changed, that it was really an accident. That it's cruel of you even to remember what I said in a childhood quarrel. Accept that it'll be true. I'm gonna save this up. And he's gonna die. And he won't do a thing. Not a thing, but you go on believing I'm just the biggest. The biggest asshole, Valentine said. Peter leapt to his feet and started for her. She shied away. Ender pried off his mask. Peter flopped back on his bed and started to laugh. Loud, but with real mirth, tears coming to his eyes. Oh, you guys are just super. Just the biggest suckers on the planet Earth. Now he's going to tell us it was all a joke, Valentine said. Not a joke. A game. I can make you guys believe anything. I can make you dance like puppets. In a phony monster voice, he said, "I'm gonna kill you and chop you into little pieces and drop you in and put you into the garbage hole." He laughed again. Biggest suckers in the solar system, God. Ender stood there watching him laugh and thought of Stilson. Thought of how it felt to crunch into his body. This is who needed it. This is who should have gotten it. Who has got it? As sure she could read his mind, Valentine whispered, "No, Ender." Oh, Peter! Peter suddenly rolled to the side, flipped off the bed, and got in position for a fight. "Oh yes, Ender," he said, "Any time, Ender." Ender lifted his right leg and took off his shoe. He held it up. "See there, on the toe? That's blood, Peter. It's not mine." Ooh, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Ender squished a caterpillar, and now he's gonna squish me. There was no getting to him. Peter was a murderer at heart, and nobody knew it but Valentine and Ender. Mother came home and commiserated with Ender about the monitor. Father came home and kept saying how it was such a wonderful surprise. They had such fantastic children that the government told them to have three, and now the government didn't want to take any of them after all. So here they were with three. They still had a third, until Ender wanted to scream at him. "I know I'm a third. I know it. If you want, I'll go away so you don't have to be embarrassed in front of everybody. I'm sorry I lost the monitor and now you have three kids and no obvious explanation. So inconvenient for you. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry." He lay in bed staring upward into the darkness. On the bunk above him, he could hear Peter turning and tossing relentlessly. Then Peter slid off the bunk and walked out of the room. Ender heard the hushing sound of the toilet clearing. Then Peter silhouetted. What is it? What's it called already? Peter heard the hushing sound of the toilet clearing, and he thinks I'm asleep. He thinks he's going to kill me. Peter walked to the bed, and sure enough, he did not lift himself up to his bed. Instead, he came by Ender's head. But he did not reach for a pillow to smother Ender. He did not have a weapon. He whispered, "Ender, I'm sorry. I know how it feels. I'm sorry. I'm your brother, and I love you." A long time later, Peter's even breathing said that he was asleep. Ender peeled the band-aid from his neck. For the second time of that day, he cried. Ooh, that was doozy. So that's the end of chapter 2. And you can really see, and as a child, this guy is a real piece of shit. And you know what? That's just painful. Oh, so yeah, that's basically it. That's chapter 2 for Ender's Game. So it's establishing not the antagonist of the story, but someone who serves as Ender's motivation for wanting to get better. I'm not really sure. When I read of Peter, all I can really see is Stilson in the first chapter, except he's a lot more cunning and conniving with his words. Like, it's really genuinely scary to see Peter's behavior because this is a kid. And I think someone said it before, kids are cruel. Kids are very cruel because they have no idea of morals, or at least you have to teach them the idea of morals. Without that, kids who are smart, they can do whatever they want, and they'll continue to bring this into their future. So seeing this, right, seeing Peter's behavior and how he abuses Ender, I'm not so sure. Those of you with siblings, I don't know how it feels like to get picked on by a brother or by a sibling who's this fierce. I know I don't have a sibling, and I can't help but feel like this chapter actually does something. Like the last chapter, it doesn't really bring up anything in me after all. But when I read this chapter, when I was reading that chapter just now, I can clearly tell I was getting like internally angry because yes, and to put it, this is the kind of person who deserves it, because this is the kind of person who really needs that kick to the jaw, kick to whatever, in order to, you know, learn a lesson. The kids are cruel, and kids need a lesson. And the scary thing is that, the scary thing is that I feel like this happens a lot more often than I have what's it called, identified, because he's just crazy. And again, at the same time, you can't blame him. blame Peter for the cruelty he shows because he's conditioned to be raised in that way. In this world, to treat thirds and his little brother, who is a third and seems to do better than him, as a rival, as obstacle, and even his sister because his sister is just annoying. And these are kids, basically. If you're gonna fault a kid for being this way, you are deluding yourself into thinking the kid can be brought into this world with a set of morals for themselves. They have to be taught all these lessons. Otherwise, you end up like someone like Peter growing up into that kind of person in the future. As we'll find out later about how he is. And yes, it's gonna be quite cruel to figure out what's going on and whatnot. And yes, I'm just gonna say outright, I don't think Peter here, as much as I despise Peter, and I am sorry if it does bring out some uncomfortable memories for the rest of you, but for his for his I don't really know. I don't really know. It's just like you can't really blame him, but you can sense in his heart that this is a soul of a murderer, as Ender has said himself. So it's quite disturbing. And the next chapter will be a bit more lighter, I hope, but you can kind of tell. And okay, let me point out one good positive thing instead of dwelling on like how kids are cruel and whatnot and how you need to teach them. The one good thing you can see here is that there's the opposite end where you have a sister, where you have a sibling who loves you for all you are, and that actually makes me feel quite happy because Valentine, I guess, is that kind of mirror image of someone I want to be close to because this is someone who would stand up for you even though even though they can't really do anything when you're being threatened by someone as fierce as Peter. So yeah, it feels very refreshing to hear that. Very refreshing to see Valentine come up with a thoroughly cold strategy of shutting down Peter in his very psychopathic tendencies to abuse Ender all the time, and it's refreshing. Basically, very refreshing to see that. And as we will explore the later chapters, these two characters will not make a these two characters will shape how Ender reacts in battle school, but they will not be present for the rest of his life, basically, or at least like the rest of this life. Maybe they'll talk later, but not really. So mhm. So yeah, that's basically it. And what's it called? We're gonna move on to the next chapter, which is called Graph. Okay, so the next chapter is named Graph. Okay, let me just see. If there's anything that you guys are getting a bit confused about, do let me know in the chat box so that I can just go back and try and explain it. Mm-hmm. So yes, we're gonna move on to what's it called? We're gonna move on to chapter 3. And we're gonna see what time is it because I do need to do something before I forget about it. So, chapter 3, Graph. The sister is a weakling. He really loves her. I know. She can undo it all from the start. He won't want to leave her. So what are you gonna do? Persuade him that he wants to come with us more than he wants to stay with her. How will you do that? I'll lie to him. And if that doesn't work, then I'll tell the truth. We're allowed to do that in emergency. We can't plan for everything, you know. Ender wasn't very hungry during breakfast. He kept wondering what it would be like at school, facing Stilson after yesterday's fight. What Stilson's friends would do. Probably nothing, but he couldn't be sure. He didn't want to go. You're not eating, Andrew? His mother said. Peter came into the room. Morning, Ender. Thanks for leaving your slimy washcloth in the middle of the shower. Just for you, Ender murmured. Andrew, you have to eat. Ender held out his wrists, a gesture that said, so feed it to me through a needle. Very funny. I try to be concerned, but it makes no difference to my genius children. It was all your genes that made us geniuses, moms, said Peter. We sure didn't get any from that. I heard that, father said, not looking up from the news that was being displayed on the table while he ate. It would have been wasted if you hadn't. The table beeped. Someone was at the door. Who is it? Who is it? Oh, no, I should say it like that. Mother asked. Father thumbed the key and a man appeared on his video. He was wearing the only military uniform that meant anything anymore. The IF, the International Fleet. I thought it was over, said father. Peter said nothing, just poured milk over his cereal. And Ender thought, maybe I won't have to go to school today after all. Father coded the door open and got up from the table. I'll see to it, he said. Stay and eat. They stayed, but they didn't eat. A few moments later, father came back into the room and beckoned to mother. You're in deep poo, said Peter. They found out what you did to that kid in school, and now they're gonna make you do time out in the belt. I'm only 6, moron. I'm a juvenile. You're a third. You got no rights. Valentine came in, her hair in a sleepy halo around her face. Where's mom and dad? I'm too sick to go to school. Another oral exam, huh? Peter said. Shut up, Peter, said Valentine. You should relax and enjoy it, said Peter. It could be worse. You don't know how. It could be an anal exam. said Valentine. Where are mother and father? Talking to a guy from IF. Instinctively, she looked at Ender. After all, for years they had expected someone to come and tell them that Ender had passed, that Ender was needed. That's right. Look at him, Peter said. But it might be me, you know. They might have realized I was the best of the lot after all. Peter's feelings were hurt, and so he was being a snot, as usual. The door opened. Ender, said father, you better come in here. Sorry, Peter, Valentine taunted. Father glowered. Children, this is no laughing matter. Ender followed father into the parlor. The IF officer rose to his feet when they entered, but he did not extend a hand to Ender. Mother was twisting her wedding band on her finger. Andrew, she said, I never thought you were the kind to get in a fight. The Stilson boy is in a hospital, the father said. You really did a number with him. With your shoe, Ender. That wasn't exactly fair. Ender shook his head. He had expected someone from the school to come about Stilson, not an officer of the fleet. This was more serious than he had thought, and yet he couldn't think what else he could have done. Do you have any explanation for your behavior, young man? Ender shook his head again. He didn't know what to say, and he was afraid to reveal himself to be any more monstrous than his actions had made him out to be. I'll take it. Whatever the punishment is, he thought. Let's get it over with. We're willing to consider extenuating circumstances, the officer said, but I must tell you that it doesn't look good. Kicking him in the groin. Kicking him repeatedly in the face and body when he was down. It sounds like you really enjoyed it. I didn't, Ender whispered. Then why did you do it? He had his gang there, Ender said. So, this excuses anything? No. Tell me why you kept on kicking him. You had already won. Knocking him down won the first fight. I wanted to win all of the next ones too, so they leave me alone. Ender couldn't help it. He was afraid. He was too afraid. Too ashamed of his acts. Though he tried not to, he cried again. Ender did not like to cry, and rarely did. Now, in less than a day, he had done it 3 times, and each time was worse. The cry in front of his mother and father and his military men, that was shameful. You took away the monitor, Ender said. I had to take care of myself, didn't I? Ender, you should have asked a grown-up for help, father began. But the officer stood up and stepped across the room to Ender. He held out his hand. My name is Graff, Ender. Colonel Hiram Graff. I'm director of primary training at Battle School in the Belt. I've come to invite you to enter the school. After all. But the monitor, the final step in your testing was to see what would happen when the monitor came off. We don't always do it that way. But in your case... And you passed? Mother was incredulous. Putting the Stilson boy in the hospital? What would I have done if Andrew had killed him? Given him a medal? It isn't what he did, Mrs. Wiggin. It's why. Colonel Graff handed her a folder full of papers. Here are the requisitions. Your son has been cleared by the IF Selective Service. Of course, we have already had your consent granted in writing at the time conception was confirmed, or he could not have been born. He has been ours from then, if he qualified. Father's voice was trembling as he spoke. It's not very kind of you to let us think you didn't want him, and then to take him after all. At this charade about the Stilson boy, Mother said. It wasn't a charade, Mrs. Wiggin. Until we knew what Ender's motivation was, we couldn't be sure what he was. He wasn't another. He wasn't another. We had to know what the action meant, or at least what Ender believed that it meant. Must you call him that stupid nickname? Mother began to cry. That's the name he calls himself. What are you gonna do, Colonel Graff? Father asked. Walk out the door with him now. That depends, said Graff. On what? On whether Ender wants to come. Mother's weeping turned into bitter laughter. So it's voluntary after all. How sweet. For the two of you, the choice was made when Ender was conceived. But for Ender, the choice had not been made at all. For conscript makes good cannon fodder, but for officers we need volunteers. Officers? Ender asked. At the sound of his voice, the others fell silent. Yes, said Graff. Battle school is for training future starship captains and commodores of flotillas and admirals of the fleet. Let's not have any deception here, Father said angrily. How many of the boys at the battle schools actually end up in command of the ships? Unfortunately, Mr. Wiggin, that is classified information. But I can say that none of our boys who make it through the first year has ever failed to receive a commission as an officer, and none has retired from a position of lower rank than chief executive officer of an interplanetary vessel. Even in the domestic defense forces within our solar system, there's honor to be had. How many make it through the first year? Asked Ender. All who want to, said Graff. Ender almost said, I want to, but he held his tongue. This would keep him out of school, but that was stupid. That was just a problem for a few days. It would keep him away from Peter. That was more important. That might be a matter of life itself. But to leave mother and father behind, and above all, to leave Valentine, he would and become a soldier. Ender didn't like fighting. He didn't like Peter's kind. The strong against the weak. He didn't like his own kind either. The smart against the stupid. I think, Graff said, that Ender and I should have a private conversation. No, Father said. I won't take him without letting you speak to him again, Graff said, and you really can't stop me. Father glared at Graff a moment longer, then got up and left the room. Mother paused to squeeze Ender's hand. She closed the door behind her when she's left. Ender, Graff said, if you come with me, you won't be back here for a long time. There aren't any vacations from battle schools. No visitors either. A full course of training lasts until you are 16 years old. You get your first leave under certain circumstances when you're 12. Believe me, Ender, people change in 6 years, in 10 years. Your sister Valentine will be a woman when you see her again, if you come with me. You'll be strangers. You'll still love her, Ender, but you won't know her. You see, I'm not pretending it's easy. Mom and Daddy? I know you, Ender. I've been watching the monitor discs for some time. You won't miss your monitor and you won't miss your mother and father. Not much, not for long. And they won't miss you either. Tears came to Ender's eye in spite of himself. He turned his face away, but would not reach up to right them. They do love you, Ender, but you have to understand what your life has cost them. They were born religious, you know. Your father was baptized with the name John Paul Wiszorek. This is Polish. Wiszorek, Catholic. The seventh of 9 children. 9 children? That was unthinkable. Criminal. Yes, well, people do strange things for religion. You know the sanctions, Ender. They were not as harsh then, but still not easy. Oh, sorry, something just pinged. Still not easy. Only the first 2 children had a free education. Taxes steadily rose with each new child. Your father turned 16 and invoked the Non-Complying Families Act to separate himself from his family. He changed his name, renounced his religion, and vowed never to have more than the allotted 2 children. He meant it. All the shame and persecution he went through as a child, he vowed no child of his would go through it. You understand? He didn't want to be. Well, no one wants a third anymore. You can't expect them to be glad. But your father and mother are a special case. They both renounced their religion. Your mother was a Mormon, but in fact their feelings are still ambiguous. You know what ambiguous means? They feel both ways. They are ashamed of having come from non-compliant families. They conceal it, to the degree that your mother refuses to admit to anyone that she was born in Utah, lest they suspect. Your father denies his Polish ancestry, since Poland is still a non-compliant nation, and under international sanction because of it. So, you see, having a third, even under the government's direct instructions, undoes everything they have been trying to do. I know that. But it's more complicated than that. Your father still named you with legitimate saints' names. In fact, he Valentine'd all three of you as himself as soon as he got you home after you were born. And your mother objected. They quarreled over it each time. Not because she didn't want you baptized, but she didn't want you baptized Catholic. They haven't really given up their religion. They look at you and see you as a badge of pride, but they were able to circumvent the law and have a third. But you're also a badge of cowardice, because they dare not go further and practice the non-compliance they still feel is right. And you're a badge of public shame, because at every step you interfere with their efforts at assimilation into normal, complying society. How can you know all of this? We monitor your brother and sister Ender. You'd be amazed at how sensitive the instruments are. We were connected directly to your brain. We've heard all that you heard, whether you were listening carefully or not, whether you understood or not. We understand. So my parents love me and don't love me? They love you. The question is whether they want you here. Your presence in this house is a constant disruption, a source of tension. Do you understand? I'm not the one who causes tension. Not everything you do, Ender. Your life itself. Your brother hates you because you are living proof that he wasn't good enough. Your parents resent you because of all the past they are trying to evade. Valentine loves me with all her heart. Completely, unstintingly, she's devoted to you, and you adore her. I told you it wouldn't be easy. What is it like there? Hard work. Studies just like school here, except we put you into mathematics and computers much more heavily. Military history, strategy and tactics, and above all, the battle room. What's that? War games. All the boys are organized into armies. Day after day, in zero gravity, there are mock battles. Nobody gets hurt, but winning and losing matter. Everybody starts as a common soldiers, taking orders. Older boys are your officers, and it's their duty to train you and command you in battle. More than that, I can't tell you. It's like playing buggers and astronauts, except that you have weapons that work and fellow soldiers fighting beside you, and your whole future and the future of the human race depends on how well you learn, how well you fight. It is a hard life, and you won't have a normal childhood. Of course, with your mind and as a third to boot, you wouldn't have a particularly normal childhood anyway. All boys, a few girls. They don't often pass the test to get in. Too many centuries of evolution are working against them. None will be like Valentine anyway. But there will be brothers there, Ender. Like Peter. Peter wasn't accepted, Ender, for the very reasons you hate him. I don't hate him. I just afraid of him. Well, Peter isn't all bad, you know. He was the best we'd seen in a long time. We asked your parents to choose a daughter next. They would have anyway, hoping that Valentine would be the Peter, but milder. She was too mild, and so we requisitioned you to be half Peter and half Valentine, if things worked out right. Am I? As far as we can tell. Our tests are very good, Ender, but they don't tell us everything. In fact, when it comes down to it, they hardly tell us anything. But they're better than nothing. Graf leaned over and took Ender's hand in his. Ender Wiggin, if it were just a matter of choosing the best and happiest future for you, I'd tell you to stay home. Stay here, grow up, be happy. There are worse things than being a third. Worse things than a big brother who can't make up his mind whether to be a human being or a jackal. Battle school is one of those worst things. But we need you. The buggers may seem like a game to you, no, Ender, but they damn near wiped us out the last time. They had us cold, outnumbered, and outweaponed. The only thing that saved us was that we had the most brilliant military commander we've ever found. Call it fate, call it God, call it damn full luck, we had Mazer Rackham. But we don't have him now, Ender. We scraped together everything mankind could produce. A fleet that makes the ones they sent us against the last time seem like a bunch of kids playing in a swimming pool. We have some new weapons too, but it might not be enough, even so. Because in the 80 years since the last war, they've had as much time to prepare as we have. We need the best we can get, and we need them fast. Maybe you're not going to work out for us, and maybe you are. Maybe you'll break down under pressure. Maybe it'll ruin your life. Maybe you'll hate me for coming here to your house today. But if there's a chance that because you're with the fleet, might survive and the buggers might leave us alone forever, then I'm going to ask you to do it. To come with me. Ender had trouble focusing on Colonel Graff. The man looked far and away and very small, as if Ender could pick him up with tweezers and drop him in a pocket. To leave everything here and to go to a place that was very hard, with no Valentine, no mom and dad. And then he thought of the films of the buggers that everyone had to see once a year. The scaling of China, the Battle of the Belt, death and suffering and terror. And Mazer Rackham and his brilliant maneuvers, destroying an enemy fleet twice his size and twice his firepower, using the little human ships that seemed so frail and weak, like children fighting with grown-ups. And we won. I'm afraid, said Ender quietly, but I'll go with you. Tell me again, said Graf. It's what I was born for, isn't it? If I don't go, why am I alive? Not good enough, said Graf. I don't want to go, said Ender, but I will. Graf nodded. You can change your mind up until the time you get in my car with me. You can change your mind. After that, you stay at the pleasure of the international fleet. Do you understand that? Ender nodded. All right, let's tell them. Mother cried. Father held Ender tight. Peter shook his hand and said, you lucky little pin-headed fart eater. Valentine kissed him and left her tears on his cheek. There was nothing to pack, no belongings to take. The school provides everything you need, from uniforms to school supplies. And as for toys, there's only one game. Goodbye, Ender said to his family. He reached up and took Colonel Graff's hand and walked out the door with him. Kill some buggers for me, Peter shouted. I love you, Andrew, Mother called. We'll write to you, Father said. And as he got into his car and waited silently in the corridor, he heard Valentine's anguish cry, come back to me! I love you forever! I'm sorry, I really cannot do all these voices correctly. So this is chapter 3, and you're introduced now to the character of Colonel Hiram Graff. Alright. Okay, give me a second. I just have to yawn. So as you can see here, Colonel Hiram Graff is going to be not what's it called? Not to be how do you say it, right? He's not cruel, but he's just very straightforward. You can quite clearly tell that this man is different from the way that the individuals you see in the chapter. We're introduced to the father and the mother in chapter as well, properly. And Colonel Hiram Graff really sells his seniority. But I don't think we should really focus on him. We should focus on how Ender actually reacts to his environment, because there is so the main thing that stands Ender out from the rest is that he has compassion, and that Graff was right. He is half Peter and half Valentine. Okay, something just went off. So basically, yes. So basically, right, there's an understanding that even for his age, Ender is something else. And Graff notes it actually quite distinctly. You can stay here and be happy, and whatnot, and your life will not go as badly as the others because you're just a third, comparatively to his father, who is like the seventh child, because that's just completely batshit crazy, coming from Poland. However, but you can see here that Ender, despite his his honesty in admitting that he did kick Stilson down, despite his inability to fight back. He did it for a reason. You can quite clearly tell he is remorseful about it. And I'm not sure whether Graf finds this an element. I think Graf maybe finds this an element that may be weak for him. But to me, I find it quite interesting because it's a notable part basically of what's happening and whatnot. And you can Mm, I don't really know, man. You can quite clearly tell that he does not want to do anything that he has planned for Stilson and whatnot, and that Peter, like going to battle school, might change him into a Peter. And very interestingly, is if reflected in the very sober way that Ender talks to him about everything from his perspective, because because of Graf's seniority, he overrides him on whatever he has to say with his experience. But you can quite clearly tell that Ender has a understanding of the ramifications of his birth, of his life and whatnot, and it's saddening, somewhat tragic that that even before that he was conceived, right? You can quite clearly tell he was allowed to be properly raised because the IF, the international fleet, wanted him to be kept over. So in that case, I guess you can say it's darkly, very darkly, what's it called? It's very darkly, how do you say? Very darkly. Also, I just realized I have been streaming for the hour without the noise of the ASMR in the background. Oh boy, I'm really sorry. Okay, so basically, yeah, being born with that kind of knowledge, as Graf said in the beginning of the chapter, because I'm assuming what's happening in the chapter is also Graf, that you have to break them with the truth, and basically what he was delivered was an ultimatum about his existence. I'm pretty sure it'll break any of you here if you were given that kind of speech, like saying, okay, you know what, I will tell you exactly what's going on with your life, but it will not be happy because the truth hurts. And to have Ender have this break given to Ender, even though he's smarter than the average 6 year old, it's kind of harsh for him. But at the same time, Graf seniority is through the understanding that this is humanity's final attack, or at least like final defense. If they don't push forward, basically, that's the end of humanity. That's it. Nothing else will come out of it. It was either do or die, because the buggers in space are not just people down there on the ground. So they're not film actors. They are real living aliens whose motives cannot be bargained with, and who cannot be stopped, and have been engaged multiple times with humanity, and all those outcomes have been turned into, death for a lot of people on both sides. So I don't know. It's quite heavy for Ender to bear this realization. And you know what? Looking at the time now, I believe, yes. I think we can just kind of stop here for a bit. I think we can stop here for now because we're pretty much quite far in. So what's happening now? So what will happen now is that I would like to say, yeah, that's it. It's the end of the stream. Thank you guys for joining me for the first few chapters of In This Game. I'm sorry that this is not as long as like I would like it to be, because I do have something to do, right? But I think the next week when I'm a bit more comfortable and whatnot, because I feel like maybe things will start to, and some issues I have right now will be sorted out. But yeah, basically everything will be okay. Yeah, I'm glad if you guys enjoyed my very very sober retelling of more sober reading over on this game. And I can say honestly, so far up to chapter 3, this book is quite interesting basically. And yeah, I would like to bring up the fact that yeah, it does reflect some people's childhood. And for me in particular, since I was never like the normal person around, so I can feel with Ender. Not to the extent that I would go and beat up some kids because they were bullying me. I did have that thought, and I was just very angry, aggressive as hell, like Peter. But the reason why I enjoy this book, before I end the stream today, is because the book itself has it connects to it connects to a person whose childhood was rough, and despite that I was never I did go to university, it's far below what Ender has to go through in battle school. It is still something I kind of sympathize with, to being ostracized as a third, to being picked on by someone like a sibling, or at least like treated badly and harshly, and to have that knowledge that your parents keep you around for some ungodforsaken reason. And Graf just spilling the beans about it is just how I would like to tell my kid self about it as well. But Yeah, we're not even counting the international conflict, because I believe at the end of the day, the conflict is an enabler for Scar to really examine how it would feel, how children would feel like as how child soldiers really feel like when they go into war, and that in itself is a very disturbing thing that is explored. And as reflected in my Twitter post, how far will humanity go to win this war? And in the coming weeks, we will re-end this game and discover just how badly they want to win this war. And we're gonna see a lot of unhappy scenes as well as good scenes. Because if it was all unhappy, I wouldn't have been able to finish this book. And there are scenes where he learns and becomes better than ever. But the times where he falls vulnerable are times where he actually has an opportunity to feel quite vulnerable because of some certain issues. So yeah, basically that's it. That's my summary for Ender's Game today. I really hope you guys enjoyed this book. If you had read it before, do let me know actually, because I'm quite curious what your thoughts are on the book. I actually just realized I didn't ask them. What's it called? I didn't ask them. I didn't ask you guys like what your opinions were on the book before I read them, but I'll cover that next time, because I believe maybe this book has been read a lot, because I know there was a movie with Ben Kingsley and what's it? Ben Kingsley and what's this? No, not Henry Ford. What's the name of Han Solo's actor already? Harrison Ford. Yeah, Harrison Ford. There was a movie about this, so yes, this is a kind of a reprint of that, and I bit by it online. So yeah, thank you so much, Merc, for coming to my soft reading stream. I apologize for the music, and I apologize for the lack of sounds throughout the reading stream. So I'll try and resolve it the next time. And the next time we read this, I assure you the book will. Next time we read this, I assure you we can definitely cover more than just 3 chapters today. So with that, I've really got nothing much to say, and I hope you guys will have a great weekend. Okay, you guys take care of yourselves and stay healthy. Our country has just recently, my state has just recently relaxed some movement control orders, so we are able to move around, but as usual, don't take this as, if you're around my place, don't take this as an excuse to, you know, go around crazily. Okay, so you guys take care of yourself, and with that, thank you so much everybody, and I'll hope to see you all on next week. All right, see you guys later. Thank you. Thank you, Akate. I hope you're doing fine as well. I hope you're doing fine. Okay, my eyes are just not working. Okay, all right, so I'll see you guys later. Bye bye. Oh, and glory be a day. Sorry. Okay, now bye bye for real.